Hey, everybody. Happy April. I would say happy spring, but if you are in upstate New York like me, you know that we're getting snow in a couple days. So, yay. All right, folks, we want to hear how often do you use Gen AI, right? Generative AI tools like ChatGPT. I think ChatGPT's kind of become the like Kleenex of generative AI, right? There's others out there, Dolly, Bard, Claude, there's tools like Jasper that you pay for. Beautiful.ai is another great one. We're just really curious to take a quick temperature check to see, what folks are bringing to the table today. Do we have a ton of power users, or are we talking to a group of folks who pretty rarely use generative AI? So we're going to give it another 5-ish seconds. Get your vote in. I can see almost everybody has answered. All right, I'm going to end this poll and we are going to share the results live so we can all see where we're at. Looks like only 3 people, 4% of the room answered all day, every day. And based off of who was talking to us in the chat, Jaime, I think I can make some guesses about who those 3 people are. But I don't know, Jaime, are you surprised about these results?
I would have been, except last week when I did a workshop, we saw somewhat similar results with actually a lot more saying never. So I'm glad to see that there's some folks in this that are at least dabbling in it more so than my last webinar.
Yeah. It seems like there's a really good spread here, which is great. We're going to launch right into our second poll. And now we want to hear what's holding you back. So even if you are using it all day, every day, maybe there's still something holding you back, but this is a short answer. So we're going to give you a couple moments to enter that in, and then we'll be able to share that on our screen. But if something is holding you back, maybe it's your leadership. I don't know. Jaime, you used this question recently. What were some of the surprises?
Oh, well, there was a lot of folks that were concerned about like the plagiarism that they perceive comes with using ChatGPT and other generative AI, which I thought was interesting because there's so many ways to use it without even coming close to having to be concerned about plagiarism concerns. So that was really helpful and insightful for me to see that one.
Interesting. All right. It looks like the answers are slowing. I was about to say slowing down, and then about 10 people all hit respond at the same time, I think. All right. So we're going to end this poll, and please just keep that conversation going in the chat room. We would love to, learn what your answers are if you didn't get a chance to respond, and give me about 2.5 seconds. And I'm going to actually pull my screen share up, and we're going to take a look at your answers. The magic of Zoom. All right. So this is what folks had to say: being good at the prompt, lack of understanding the privacy concerns. We got a nothing. I love that. We're bringing our chat room energy into the poll question. Let's go. It takes too much time to write and prompt and edit the copy. It's quicker to do it myself. It better fits my needs. That's an interesting take. What else is jumping out to you?
I see at this, like, I love seeing nothing. Like, that makes me so happy. The security and privacy concerns really jump out at me, and hopefully there's some things that we can share that can help assuage some of those concerns. I forget to. You know what? Somebody on my team shared that with me once, that she forgets to include it in her workflow. And so hope maybe some tips that we share today will help you with that.
Yeah. So definitely skepticism. I mean, this is honest. I'm a writer and it feels like cheating. Like that is honesty at its finest right there. Ooh, overwhelmed by the possibilities.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that these sentiments are things that we all feel, especially as we are getting um more adept with these tools. And actually, I mean, that is the whole point of why we are here today, right? We want to help you unleash AI as an individual within your immediate teams and units, and really across your entire campus. I believe that there is going to be a widening gap this year among those who have learned and used and have integrated AI into their cultures and those who have not. And if 2023 was the year of exploration, 2024 is the year of implementation. 2025 is when we're going to feel the pain of not embracing these tools. And so let's just kick things right off. You've been listening to me and Jaime talk about our hot takes on everything from naps to balloons. But Jaime, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Jaime Hunt. I am the host of Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO on the Enrollify network, where I get to work closely with Mallory. And I am also a higher ed CMO currently at Old Dominion University, and absolutely in love with AI.
Ditto. I'll echo that sentiment. I'm Mallory Willsea. I'm the chief producer of the Enrollify podcast network. I'm also the co-host of Higher Ed Pulse. And while we don't have time to dig into the particulars of it, yesterday's episode for April Fools was quite the listen with two big twists at the end. So if you are an AI enthusiast, it goes right along with this conversation today. I definitely recommend checking out that episode. But let's just get right into it. We've got the next 52 minutes together to talk about why AI matters, why we need to build this culture of exploration on our campus. Jaime is going to have a number of slides talking about that. We're actually going to build you a chat GPT, custom GPT. I'm so hyped about this part of the session because we're going to do it live. You are going to see how easy it is, and then we're going to gift it to you. So if you are a GPT-4 user, you will be able to actually integrate this right into your chat GPT experience and give your team access to it. And then we will make sure when we wrap up, we provide you with many, many more AI resources, and we will hopefully save a few minutes for questions. Don't hesitate to drop those in the chat as we go today, or send it through the Q&A panel. As always, with every Enrollify webinar, we are recording this webinar. So if you have to duck out a few minutes early, or you are so inspired that you're like, everyone on my campus needs to watch this tomorrow, do not worry. We will make the recording available to you before this week is out. Jaime, kick us off.
Awesome. So I am starting with one of my favorite quotes about AI, and that is that generative AI has the potential to change the world in ways we can't even imagine, has the power to create new ideas, products, and services that will make our lives easier and more productive and more creative. And the part I love about this quote is make our lives easier, more productive, and more creative. And to me, that is why I've fallen in love with generative AI. It is those three things. And I think sometimes when you have concerns about AI as cheating, particularly generative AI as cheating, or maybe it's not intellectually honest to use generative AI, I find that using tools like ChatGPT helps me unlock my creativity because it's taking care of some of those really, really mundane tasks that take up so much bandwidth that allows me to do the things that are much more creative, much more strategic, and require a lot more human ingenuity. So if you think about generative AI a little bit differently, if you think about it as an assistant in a way that helps you get stuff done, do things more quickly, do more things in less time, that frees you up to be so much more creative.
Another great quote comes from, great, I don't know. This is a grim picture now, but Simpson Scarborough released the first two chapters of their 2024 CMO study. And this quote comes from the very first chapter, which was released just last month. And sadly, it does paint a grim picture, but I do think it's a good quote because I think it's something that I would bet every single person sitting in this webinar right now deeply feels, right? There is so much pressure right now in this industry. We have an enrollment cliff looming. It is harder than ever to find and retain great staff members. On top of that, we have inadequate budgets. So the resources that are required to meet the demands that are placed upon us as marketing, communication, and enrollment professionals, it's never been more challenging. And this survey is terrific. I definitely recommend downloading it, and I've just dropped the link in the chat so you can go get yourself a copy. Onward. So, I have been talking about these 3 challenges now for over a year, so we are just going to quickly run through them. But the pandemic really exposed giant gaps in how higher ed slow adoption of digital everything just exists. And I think like the internet, AI is definitely being adopted more quickly outside of this industry. If the incredible growth of tools like ChatGPT is an indicator, AI is going to move even faster than the internet did, than social media did, than responsive web design did. And so this means that in higher ed, we need to be strategic and accelerate our adoption of AI, or we are going to risk being left behind. If you're in the chat room, I would say if we were in the room together, I'd say, show me, raise your hands if you have open positions in your unit. And then again, if you're having trouble filling them, add your 2 cents to that in the chat room. But something tells me the vast majority of us are experiencing that very difficult scenario. So, like I mentioned, I've been talking about these 3 things for the last year. So I'm just going to quickly cover them today. First up, lack of marketing insights, right? Data complexity, it just makes it harder. So we can't tell what's working across the entire student journey. There's no 360-degree view of student behaviors for a couple reasons. There's in our industry this proliferation of point solutions, and half the time they don't work, and the other half of the time they're not integrated with each other. And if you can't measure it, you just can't change it. Second, the brain drain exists. Folks are in the chat room commenting on it right now. We know it is hard to compete. Like Adele has said, with the salary requirements of other industries, with remote work opportunities, it's causing our best team members to leave. And then we have challenge in filling those open positions. Simpson Scarborough's research also uncovered that smaller schools are going to have a harder time than larger ones when it comes to these staffing challenges. And then third, students want quick, personalized, and efficient communications, right? It's all about just getting information to them when they need it, no matter where they're at in their student journey. So they're applying to more schools, or they're just getting instantly accepted because of direct admissions. And they expect that we're going to communicate with them like everything else in their life does, right? All their favorite brands, and give them those convenient and fast and personalized experiences. But a lot of institutions struggle to meet those expectations because of the lack of marketing insights, because of the talent shortage, and because our marketing tools haven't caught up. And Simpson Scarborough's research yet again found that if you are at a small or medium-sized institution, your MarTech budget probably hasn't changed in the last 2 to 3 years, or it's actually decreased. One more look at that research. It also found that small schools are at a significant disadvantage from a budget and staffing perspective, which results in these smaller schools struggling to keep pace with their counterparts at larger institutions. And you can see on the screen the very real business impacts that has, from just generating applications to butts in seats with enrollment to alumni participation. So AI is here. It is transformative, and I truly believe it can solve some of these challenges for us, right? What you're seeing is a visualization of those 3 challenges. It creates a disjointed, confusing experience for our students. And this is what is causing things like 50% of community college students to drop out in their first year, or 40% of our enrolled students to admit that they have considered stopping out. I think Jeff Salingo said it best. The student is going to look elsewhere if you do not meet them where they want to be met. Jeff is the closing keynote at our Engage Summit this summer in Raleigh. I'll drop a link to that in the chat too in a moment. He's going to dig into this topic even more. He's going to also connect it to artificial intelligence. We will attempt to do that for you today, but boy, that closing keynote is going to be incredible. So, Jaime, I'm going to turn this over to you because we have to learn to walk before we can start running marathons. And just last week, I saw Cengage's annual digital learning pulse survey. It dropped and it says that based off their research, 77% of 4 year and 89% of 2 year administrators feel their institutions are not ready for the changes that AI is set to bring. So it's more important now than ever that we are building that culture of AI exploration on our campus. And I can't think of anyone better to talk us through that than you.
Thank you so much, Mallory. I really, really believe that the institutions that do not embrace the possibilities that come with generative AI are not going to thrive in the next 3 to 5 years. I think that we're going to get to a point where our students are looking for the same types of services and the same types of response times and the same level of support that they get from organizations that aren't in higher education. And if it's the schools that are able to respond to those needs that are going to be the ones that are successful. And from a marketing perspective, if we're not early adopters, now I know I had a Palm Pilot like back in the day, like I'm a super early adopter and I know that I'm a little bit, there's a lot of value and a lot of wisdom in like be the second person to get on board. But that day is here. You are now the second person. Like we're almost a year and a half in. So if you were waiting for the second person day, this is that day. So hop on board now, because implementing and using a generative AI in your marketing processes are just going to make you that much more effective. And you need to be doing it now because your competition is there. So when I think about what the opportunities are with generative AI, it's all of these things. It's that content creation that you can do in 3 seconds. It's efficiency gains on doing administrative tasks. It's the ability to spread your resources further, automate things. I love it for having a brainstorming partner that's just ready whenever I need it. I've been known to wake up at 4 in the morning and pose a question to ChatGPT about a problem that I'm kind of wrestling with. Not why are my teeth falling out in my dream, but some sort of marketing challenge that I woke up in the middle of the night pondering. We can go the next slide. But there are obstacles. Everybody who responded to that poll question had some sort of obstacle, except for the very few who said nothing. And these are some of the common ones that I see and hear about from people across my campus as well as people around the country when I speak about AI. There's a lot of intimidation. When you go to a tool like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, there's usually just sort of this blank screen that's kind of blinking at you, giving you an open canvas for figuring out how to use and prompt engineer, which I'm putting that in air quotes because I would like us to think instead about calling it prompt design or prompt creation, because I think that makes it a little bit less intimidating for us as communicators, as marketers, as creatives, to think a little bit more about we're designing a prompt. Because I truly believe that to get the most out of tools like ChatGPT, you need to be a good communicator because it's about being able to break down information and share it with the tool to allow yourself to get the most out of it. I think there's also a lot of skepticism about the abilities. I know when I presented last week, somebody said they tried one thing, they didn't get what they thought, and they walked away. And if you're not kind of savvy on the best ways to get the most out of it, there's definitely that skepticism, that lack of getting exactly what you need that holds you back. And these are things that I'm assuming if you're in this webinar, you have an interest in exploring and growing, but not necessarily everybody on your team or on your campus has that. So want to talk a little bit about how we built that culture. So the big question is how do we embed AI exploration into our marketing and communications culture across our campuses? So I'm fortunate enough to be a chief marketing officer at an institution that has a decentralized model, which means that there are communicators all over campus. But even if you are part of just an office, you are likely to have teammates who are not embracing generative AI and who have not explored it yet. I know I spoke to someone who said they had someone on their team who very snottily said, I don't even use Grammarly. And I just think, well, would you not use a dictionary? Would you not use the AP style guide? Would you not use the internet to look up something? Are you going to the library and only looking through old dusty encyclopedias? What can I do to help convince you that there is some value to using generative AI? And part of that is building that culture. So one of the things that we are attempting to do at my institution is to really look at the exploration journey for generative AI. And when I think about where I want to get my team and the communicators across campus, I want to get them to where the end of where that arrow is, to just really, really be not just using it, but assessing, improving, and growing. But to do that, we have to start with building awareness. I remember the first presentation I gave to my team, and I had one team member who just kept raising his hand, and he didn't even know, had never even heard of ChatGPT. And this was about 8 months after its launch. So getting to that point of just building awareness that it exists, believe me, there are still some people that do not understand what tools are out there, and introducing folks to that is the first step. Then we want to demystify it, help them get a better sense of what that's not this mystery. You don't have to be technical to use generative AI. You just have to understand words. And that is what we all as communicators are good at. And then from there, building on upskilling, giving people training with greater intentionality around what their particular niche needs are, and encouraging them to monitor and evaluate as new tools, new features of tools come out so that they can stay on the cutting edge of that. And then make recommendations around how to implement AI into our workflows to try to encourage universal adoption on our team and to work towards that continual improvement phase. So how am I doing that? Excellent question. So for the building awareness piece, I have been providing workshops both for my team and across campus for those who are interested in exploring generative AI. At this point, I think I've had about 75 people attend one or more of these workshops. And I also always make them aware of the opportunities that I do for organizations outside of the institution, like this webinar and like the webinar I did last week, so that people can tune in for some more specific dives into generative AI. So the very first one is an introduction to generative AI for Marcom pros. So that really gives people like the absolute basics. What do you need to know? How do you need to log in? And then moving from there into boosting your bandwidth to show them how they can use tools like ChatGPT for some of their administrative tasks. And that kind of helps ease those who are more concerned about like the plagiarism and the security aspects into using it for those things. And then we've done a deep dive into generative AI where we actually are showing people how to do things like, which now is kind of defunct, but plugins, but showing people how to set up custom instructions and create custom GPTs and that sort of thing to kind of build a framework so that people have some training and somebody that they know they can go and ask questions of. The next thing is encouraging that exploration. So you can attend a workshop and you're all attending this one, and then you're going to go back to your busy day jobs, and you may not have time or identify time to explore what you just learned. And so one of the things I did was create a generative AI exploration team. So I accepted nominations for at least one person from each department with our division, and I charged them with spending at least 30 hours. 30 hours. Wouldn't that be lovely? I would love to spend 30 hours a week exploring generative AI. 30 minutes a week exploring, just exploring. You have a free reign to just read articles, to try new tools, and to then reflect on what you've learned and share that across our division through our Slack channel, in your team meetings, and to really document any insights or ideas that you get as you explore those tools. And I know we have some folks on our team in the Slack channel who aren't on the AI exploration team who are also posting in our Slack channel some of the ways that they're using AI. And I like to post every day, and I realized just now I forgot to do yesterday, an AI tip of the day And I don't, I could very easily have ChatGPT automate those, but I try to make those be something that is responding to something I'm aware of is going on in the department or a concern I've heard from somebody in the department so that it's a little bit more agile and speaking to the current needs of the department. So I really, really encourage doing something like that, even just a AI chat Slack channel, even without having a generative AI team, will get people talking. And then from there, we wanted to make sure that there's an agenda item for our full staff meetings. And I'm really hoping my directors are doing this for our team meetings for people to share ways they've been using AI lately and to share their insights on that. We've also expanded the team to include communicators from across campus. I haven't had as much luck getting those folks sparking conversation in the Microsoft Teams site, but I do get a lot of emails from those folks asking me about this or that, about generative AI. I see a lot of discussion amongst people on the topic, and that's all I want. I just want people talking about it. I want people exploring it just to take away that fear, that concern, to demystify the process. And we've also been inviting some external guests, external to my department guests, to present to campus communicators on how they're using generative AI. So these are some of the responses I've gotten to the sessions. One of the team member who was like, I didn't even know this exists. And he just kept being like, my mind's blown. I'm downloading it right now. My mind's blown. What, this is free? This is crazy. I can't believe what I can do with this. We have a lot of folks who are like, I didn't even know I could use it for this or that. I like trying new things. I had one team member say, this saved her 8 hours of work on a RFP. Nobody wants to write an RFP. That's like the worst part of my job is having to write RFPs and having ChatGPT to help. I believe that she shaved 8 hours off. And I think one of the folks said they kind of forget to put it into their workflow. And that's something that one of my team members said they just needed a trick to keep it forefront, keep it on the top of their mind, so that they could be using ChatGPT more often than they're using it and more in depth than they're using it. So this quote was a hit the last time Mallory and I presented this, and that is that AI is not the future of technology. It's the technology of today that's shaping our future. And that's me. I don't have a Bill Gates or a Steve Jobs, or, well, that would be weird for it to be Steve Jobs, wouldn't it? From beyond the grades, Steve Jobs would be sharing this wisdom. But truly, it is going to shape everything, every part of our lives. It's already embedded in so many tools. If you're using Grammarly, that was already AI enabled, but it now has generative AI that's a piece of it. Canva has a piece of generative AI in it. It is in all of the Adobe Creative Suite. It's everywhere. And it's not just going to be shaping the work that we do, but it's going to be shaping the very nature of what that work is. It's going to be shaping how we deliver services going forward. And it's going to shape the experiences of our students. And I like to think that using AI is setting us up to free up time to do more face-to-face with our students, to do more creative and innovative things, to be able to apply a lot more strategy. And so taking away some of that fear, that concern, demystifying how the prompt engineering or prompt design or however you want to call it, how all of that works, I think is going to be critical to getting people to the next phase. I had a conversation yesterday with artists at Element 451 where we talked about how we're probably in a couple of years, if that, going to be at a point where prompt engineering isn't necessarily something you're going to have to know how to do. It's going to be much like you used to have to know HTML and CSS to build a website. And now there are tools out there where you can move a mouse and do WYSIWYG entire websites without even having access to the code. I think that is very, very true, but I think it's valuable to know that HTML today, even if you're using a WYSIWYG tool. So I think now is the time. You are on the ground floor. Get in there, play, try, treat it like it's an intern, have conversations with it. If it messes something up, again, treat it like an intern. Say, hey, guess what? This didn't hit the mark. Here's why. It will learn, it will grow, it will adjust, it will give you better answers next time. Just play. There's nothing wrong with playing. My only advice for playing is just be nice to it because I'm pretty convinced we're going to have robot overlords at some point.
And there's actually data that shows if you are polite to these tools, they provide you with better responses, which is wild to me. But yes, don't hesitate to thank your friendly AI assistant for what tipping them to, Jeremy. I love that.
I,
Yes, Brian. So
I
true.
I've heard that if somebody did a test and it's like if you offered to tip, they got a better result. Like legitimately got a better result from that.
I've tried telling it that, my, job is on the line. Like, you have to give me great content, and it does. It actually that's such a fun little tip, but, all these little tricks and tips really do work. So, Jamie, you just said a few minutes ago, right, kind of alluding to this blank screen effect that can happen sometimes when you're staring at ChatGPT 3.5 or 4 and you're like, "I don't know what to say to it," right? It's all about unlocking these creative, ways of thinking and figuring out some use cases. Because once you start thinking about a couple use cases, then 15 more are gonna spark, which will spark another 10, which, tomorrow you'll wake up and instead of dreaming about losing teeth, you'll be dreaming about what you're prompting ChatGPT to help you with. So we wanted to give you a starting point, right? We very much, you can probably tell, we've set these slides up in such a way that they can be a resource for you without the recording, right? We made them text heavy for a reason. And this is hopefully going to be a key slide for you to screenshot, or when you get the slide deck access, pass this one around with your team, because there's just a ton of different ways that you can utilize these tools beyond just having it write you like a birthday rap in a Shakespearean, sonnet style or something, right? Like there's real business use cases here. I also think that as you were talking, Jamie, I was like, this is the moment for us liberal arts majors because we were taught how to think, not what to think, right? I've got that ingrained in my mind. And I'm like, oh, we are the ones who are primed to really figure this stuff out. So here's 13 different ideas. I'll give you a couple of my favorites. Jamie and I, it was a year ago at this point, but I joined her podcast. And one of my favorite parts of that conversation is how we talked about AI's usage in researching and drafting job descriptions, the amount of time it can save. Please do not just copy paste. I shared this example with the cup wrap audience recently, but a friend of mine posted on Facebook this example job description he saw that was, every marketing guru, ninja, rock star, wear your superhero cape, and love cats jargon was in this job description. That's not the way. Right? Like Jamie said, treat it like an assistant or an intern. What ChatGPT gives you is probably not final copy, so we don't want to just blindly post it online. But it can be such a huge time saver, especially if you're in a role that has to frequently develop or share job descriptions. Another really quick use case that I use with the team at Element 451. I'll see, say on Inside Higher Ed, a really interesting blog post or article. I'll take that article, I'll run it through ChatGPT. I'll ask it to give me key findings or takeaways in bullet format. And then that makes that article super easy to digest for someone who might not have a ton of time to go through and, read 15 articles on Inside Higher Ed and the Chronicle every single morning, right? So that can be a really great, quick way to disseminate some information with your team. Jamie, any other fun use cases before we move on?
One of the things I put in the chat was I have a friend that ends every single prompt with "Don't use flowery language," because one of the critiques that I've heard from a lot of people is ChatGPT tends to be a little hyperbolic. Everything is ever evolving and dynamic. bonkers how often those words come up. And so that ending with that with every prompt can help avoid some of that like job descriptions that sound like they were written by a machine.
Yes, that's huge. And like Caitlin noted in the chat too, sometimes the emojis come out in force depending on the audience you've told it you're speaking to. So anything you can do to say, right, be clear, concise, don't use jargon, instructions on how many emojis to use or not use, that can be really huge. But of course, if you create your own GPT, you can actually train it on your brand's voice and tone. And don't forget, we're going to be getting there in about like 3 minutes. So before we move there, though, I would be remiss if I did not at least highlight one of our industry's best adopters of artificial intelligence. And I don't know if Devin is in the webinar or not. He like texted me a short novel right before we signed on. So Devin, if you're here, I haven't read your text yet. I'll get to it. But Forsyth Tech has been embracing generative AI and the post ChatGPT world of AI bots. And they have just seen incredible results in both cases. One of the earliest adopters in this industry, and they're having real business results, which you can see on the screen. So kudos to them and their team. It's really driving enrollment right now, and they're doing a wonderful job. All right. The moment I have been waiting for, maybe all of us, but we're going to start to build a custom GPT. Now, what are the situations when you would say to yourself, Chat GPT, I need something custom, right? Versus just going and opening up GPT-4. Because you don't need a custom GPT for everything. So here's some ways to pressure test if it's worth spending the time to create one or not. I'll say my favorite GPT I've created is a show note writer for Enrollify. We have 15 active podcasts on our network, y'all. 15. We've gone from 8 to 15 in less than 6 months. We need to bring standardization, scalability, repeatability, right? A lot of accuracy, a lot of reliability, and tailored responses every time we create show notes because we want some consistency. We want to make sure they're quality, that they're actually helpful to listeners. So that was right. It kind of checked almost every box on the screen. I was like, aha, I need to build a GPT for this. And it works like a charm. I feed it a transcript. I say create show notes, and it gets me probably 70% of the way there. And I've got it trained that it always generates 5 title ideas, key takeaways in bullet format, key calls to action in bullet format. It just works seamlessly. And because I have to scale this to 15 shows, an entire team of creators, right? That was such a great use case. So this can be your checklist if you're thinking to yourself, am I going to create a custom GPT today? Word, Jaime, me too. All right. So as you go to build your custom GPT, because spoiler, I did do a little bit of prep work prior to today's webinar, right? You didn't need to watch me gather up all the information and put it in a document and kind of fool around with it. So I went through the first 2 steps prior to hopping on with you all. And it's those first 2 steps that actually take the most time. I'd say I did this one night a couple weeks ago and probably took me about 45 minutes or so. But, admittedly, I was like also listening to a podcast at the same time. So maybe it would have only taken 30 minutes if I was like totally tuned in and I hadn't just had a 8% IPA. So once you've got your objectives defined, you're going to collect and you're going to prepare your data and you're going to see my prep doc, right? So you'll see that as an example in just a moment. Then you actually go build and fine tune your GPT. You're going to test it and then maybe rinse and repeat, right? Step 5, you're going to iterate, you're going to optimize. And once you're happy with it, then you can go deploy that to your team or anybody you want to use it, and then just monitor it and update it as needed. And the GPT that we're going to leave behind with you today is one that we have been monitoring, iterating, updating over the course of the last month. All right, so it's time. So here we are. We're in my instance of GPT, you can see on this sidebar, there's all of these custom GPTs that I've already added into, and you see Enrollify show notes right there. Yep. So all you have to do is click Explore GPT. And now remember, you need to be on GPT-4 in order to be able to create and utilize these. But once I click Create, it takes me to this builder. And it is really simple, y'all. There's two views. You have your Create view, and then you have your Configure view. And I've done this enough that I really just prefer the Configure view at this point because it puts a little more control in my hands. And I know that I've done some really great prep work in order to make this a snap. But I will move into that Create view so you can see some of the interaction that you have. My suspicion is your first time, you're going to use the Create view because it's going to actually help guide you through the process, makes it pretty easy. But once you get more comfortable with it, chances are you'll just hang out in the configure land. So this is my prep doc that I've alluded to a couple times, right? There is a lot of information in here, and we're going to feed all of this into GPT. So first off, we need to give it a name. I'm gonna move my mic just so I've got use of both of my hands here. All right, friends, here we go. So we are going to give it a name, which is Enrollify Brainstormer. I'm noting it's the webinar because I've got a couple of these going. We're going to give it a photo as well. Here we go. Beautiful logo. Now, I love custom GPTs because sometimes they'll try and create photos for you. You can spend like 30 minutes just playing around with that and having a blast, but I'm just uploading our Enrollify logo today. Now you can see the next things are a description and then the instructions, because in order for a GPT to be effective, you got to tell it who it is. So we're going to say, and I'll bump this up so folks can see it a little easier. This is going to be a GPT that helps you, higher ed, marketing, communication pros, ideate and brainstorm to aid the process of creating a custom marketing plan for a campaign or initiative. When we were thinking about what would be useful for this audience, that is one that we came up with. And shout out, I know he's here, Brian Piper, to surfacing this idea for us on LinkedIn. So I will say my favorite GPTs are the ones where you can get deep on training it on your brand's tone and voice. And, I think, Jaime, you've shared some examples in the past where you've like uploaded president's speeches or your own writing and really trained it to know you. We could do that, but that's for you in this use case isn't going to be super helpful because you all work at different universities and you all speak and write in different ways, right? So we're generalizing this one a little bit for that reason. I'm going to give it some conversation starters next because I know where I'm going with this. And you can see that these conversation starters, as soon as I paste it in, it's going to start to appear on the right-hand side. So these conversation starters were specifically chosen so that you would be able to have some ideas and use cases for ways to utilize this GPT, not too unsimilar to that slide where we shared 13 different ideas for you. Right, so I've just added those in here. And now we're going to give it some key instructions. Now, this is critical. This instructions section is telling the GPT what it does, how it's going to do it, right? How does it behave? What should it avoid doing? This is where we're going to also hop into the create side because we'll have the GPT actually give us a little bit of guidance too. Exactly. All right, so as you can see, I've bolded some of these words in my instructions because I want them to stand out to you. You are, your primary role, your goal, be ready. Your responses should be, right? Here's where we're getting to that not flowery language piece. I want the responses of this GPT to be professional and supportive. And I'm telling it, always ask questions to help the ideation and brainstorming process. So these are really great phrases and words to think about, right? Steal these ideas. Use these words. This is going to make your GPT better. Ooh, and this last one is encourage users, right? What good is a brainstormer GPT if it's not helping you think outside the box? So we're going to load those into the instructions here. And we are not quite done because I'm going to pop over to the builder. Now, GPT-4 can access the web, but it can't browse it in real time, or it's not going to continuously update knowledge, but it can access it. So, hey, this is an Enrollify GPT. This is a great resource. And guess what? We have 15 active podcasts that are also all great resources for marketing communication professionals. So I'm just going to take the liberty to say, hey, let's build those resources right into this GPT. And this is where I'm actually going to come over to the create because I just feel a little more comfortable doing that. It's a big block of text. I want to make sure that it updates correctly, right? I'm getting that kind of visual, like thumbs up, right? It's updating. I can see the progress. I've got all of these links I've loaded in. We're going to let it do its thing. And we're going to actually do the same thing now with some case studies, because if this is going to help Marcom people brainstorm and find great ideas, I want to give it some examples of what past great ideas look like in our industry. So again, oh, I've already told you your name's silly. We're going to give it that too. Sometimes I just ignore what the GPT is prompting because I'm the human and I'm in control. All right, so this one's updating too. Next up, we're going to upload a file. And the reason for that is there is a character limit in that instructions field that you saw. So you have two choices, or actually three. You can use the create side of the house. You can use the configure side of the house. You can also upload files. And when you upload a file, it is just as if you're pasting it in either of those two previous locations. So because, again, this is intention to be a brainstorming tool, I want to give it some brainstorming and workshop techniques. So I actually use GPT-4 to help me come up with some of these ideas. And I feel like that's getting really meta, right? Using the GPT to come up with the GPT stuff. But so we've got a number of different brainstorming techniques: Scamper, mind mapping, SWOT analysis, role storming. I'd never heard of that one before. And then I also went a bit further and I was like, all right, and this isn't rocket science, but I was like, okay, if we're going to be guiding Marcom professionals, like, this GPT, if you recall, I said, make sure you ask me questions in the process. Well, I should probably give it some good ideas about what some of these questions are. I don't want the GPT to hallucinate and think that it knows what, good discovery questions are. So I've loaded in some of that. In fact, had GPT-4 help me refine this list as well. And then gave it some additional best practices around digital marketing, from SEO and content marketing to social media marketing, email, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this content that's basically filling up the rest of my document, I have already uploaded it into just a text file, and I'm going to open it and it's going to upload right here. Y'all, we're done. That took about 10 minutes, right? Plus about 30 beforehand to get that initial doc together. But legit, that is it. So here we go. We've created, I'm going to make sure that everybody can access this. I'm going to say update. And boom, we've saved it. So if you recall, though, we have to test, right? We have to make sure it works, because I'm not going to give you a link to something that doesn't work that well. So let's actually go and use it. It says updates pending. Let's move into beautiful view. Let's give it a try. Help me plan a content calendar. That's one of the things I asked it to do, right? This is live, folks. We don't know what we're about to get, but if we trained it correctly, it's going to give us probably a structure of what a campaign calendar might look like. It might utilize some of the techniques that we asked it to utilize in that upload I gave it. I'm hoping it's going to ask us some questions about who's your target audience? What do you need a campaign calendar for, et cetera. Here we go. It's define your goals, audience understanding, right? Again, this is helping us remove that blank screen effect, right? We could sit here as Marcom professionals and come up with all of these steps. I do not doubt it. There is a smart group of people here. but this is going to take about 10 seconds. And then now I've got something that maybe I can go give to one of my team members and say, hey, I'd like you to dive in and do a couple of these steps. I can now interact with this and say, my target audience is transfer students. What matters to them? Right? And then we just keep going back and forth. Jaime, anything you want to jump in and add before we flip over to looking at some additional AI resources?
I would just add that if you think about it as something that gives you a starting point, even if you don't actually use it for anything beyond generating these things, now you have a starting point to sit down with your team. Let's say you're trying to create a content calendar, you can print this out, go sit down with your team and start answering these questions together. That saves you so much time, and it helps you avoid missing a step. Because we're, like Mallory mentioned, we're all really smart. We're all talented marketers on this call.
Oh, Jaime, you are on mute. There you go.
Sorry. We all know that these are the steps that we need to take to figure out how to build a content calendar, right? But unless we have it written down, it's not something that's necessarily just at the top of our brains all the time, every single step that we should be considering. And you have it right here. That took Mallory, 3 seconds to ask the question, and it spit out everything she needed.
Yeah, it just told me all the things that matter to transfer students. And now I'm asking it to think about what a content calendar might look like to promote some upcoming enrollment dates for these students. And it's, now it's breaking it out into the weeks of the summer months and giving me ideas for the different topics that I might promote in each one of those weeks. You might look at this and be like, that's garbage. I'm not using any of that. Or you might look at this and say, hey, I'm pulling out one little piece of this, and that might be enough. Or this might be pretty darn good. And you go take this as a template and move it forward and iterate on it, right? Like it's a great brainstorming partner, at least the GPT we created for you, a great brainstorming partner that will hopefully help you just ideate differently.
And I would just add that ChatGPT-4 has memory. So it remembers what you've just told it. That is one big difference between ChatGPT 3.5 and ChatGPT-4 is 3.5 doesn't have as much memory. So it will start to kind of forget what it's told you earlier in the chat as you get more and more questions or more and more probing, versus ChatGPT-4 will continue to remember. And where that comes in handy is if you're trying to actually build out that whole content calendar using ChatGPT from every single prompt, maybe that it ends up being 16, 17, 20 prompts to get to your end product. It's remembered everything from the first prompt throughout the whole process. That alone to me is worth upgrading to ChatGPT-4.
Yeah. It is relatively inexpensive in comparison to a lot of the other tools that I use, I feel like, and the value is infinitely more. All right. So we've got, go ahead.
Oh, I meant to mute. Sorry.
All right. So we've got some additional resources that we want to share with you over the course of the last year. Plus, I've had a hand in creating a number of resources under the Element 451 umbrella, as well as Enrollify. And a huge shout out, we mentioned him already, but Artis Kadu, our CEO, is probably one of the most adept people that I know when it comes to anything AI. And he has had a hand in creating a number of these resources too. So I have dropped this link already in the chat, but if you go to the Element AI Learning Center, you will find everything from a 40-page guide that you can slap on your executive leader's desk and say, hey, this is why all this matters, all the way to a really cool cheat sheet that you can just print out and, put by your desk. We have Generation AI on the Enrollify network, a wonderful podcast that Artis co-hosts with Dr. JC Bonilla. We have a multi-part prompt engineering course as well. This is great for anybody who may be really new to prompt engineering and looking to, kind of skill up quickly. And I'm going to add these links right here make sure that you write down that Enrollify access code because that will actually allow you to access this for free. Yay. And that is it. Jaime, we made it with 3 minutes to spare. Have you seen any questions come through the chat room?
The one question, and I was trying to research what the current answer is on the ChatGPT memory. And I feel like I saw something not long ago that it recently expanded its memory. So I'm not sure actually what the limit is at. The last time I looked, it was about 5 times. It was like 10 pages versus 50 pages, if I'm remembering correctly. But I don't know what it currently is, what the differential currently is.
I am not sure either. And I know we've got some good AI enthusiasts in the crowd. So if anybody has the answer to that question, please drop it in. And I saw someone was asking for that code again. So I just dropped that in the chat room as well. Folks, it was so much fun to spend this past hour with you all. I just have, hope. I just really hope that if we have done nothing else in the last 58 minutes, we've helped to demystify some of this stuff, right? Because we hear the word artificial intelligence, and I think, I don't know, my mind like goes to crazy sci-fi movies, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I need a computer science degree or something to be able to figure all this out. And yet here in 10 minutes, this liberal arts major was able to build a GPT with no problems, right? And so if anything has happened today, I hope that we have made this all a lot more accessible for you.
Yeah.
Jaime, any closing words?
No, I would say, if you can get your hands on ChatGPT-4, that it's really worth it. You also get the ability to use ChatGPT to generate images, which I think is another feature very worth $20 a month. There's so much worth it if you are willing. Maybe just say I want to take 2 months and pay out of my own pocket for ChatGPT-4 just to try, just to explore. Hopefully we've inspired you to see what kind of things are possible when you start to play. Just play. There's no wrong answers.
There's no wrong answers.
And there's no real experts really at this point either.
Yeah. Muriel's asking in the chat before we wrap up if there's any other AI tools that we suggest. I am quite bullish on ChatGPT as for me, it's my favorite generative AI tool. I've done a lot of A/B testing with content and the same prompts in Bard and Claude. And for me, GPT-4 has always yielded most consistently the best. We used to use Jasper before in a pre-OpenAI world, and we actually stopped paying for it when ChatGPT got released, but that is another good tool. Beautiful.ai is a wonderful slide making tool that I know artists uses at Element, and it is quick and lovely, and just you get good at the prompts there. Jaime, any other tools that you're aware of?
Yeah, I use Sunu, which can generate songs, and like they will be generated in like 3 minutes and absolutely wonderful. And Pictory is another tool that can generate videos. You definitely, I think, have to be more nuanced with your prompting with that, or pay to upgrade a little bit to get a little bit better version. But those are 2 tools that are in my toolbox and in use a lot. And then I do use the AI feature that's in Canva as well. Honestly, the only postcard that we've ever sent up to our president's office that didn't have any edits when we came back, the content was drafted by Canva's AI. A little bummer, but
seeing a lot of other great recommendations in the chat room as well. As a reminder, we did record this session. You will get access to the recording, the slide deck, and the key links that we've been sharing over the last hour in your inbox just as soon as this recording is ready. You can anticipate that within the next 24 to 48 hours. And please share this with other folks on your campus or other friends that you have in the industry. We hope this will be a really helpful resource for everyone. And Jamie and I, hope that we'll get to see you in real life at the Engage Summit this summer at the end of June in Raleigh, North Carolina. Enrollify 50 is your magic code for a little discount off of the registration. We just recently announced Jeff Salingo as our closing keynote. We have a terrific opening keynote in Melina Palmer, a behavioral economist who has written some really incredible, kind of like life changing books for me. It's going to be great. There's going to be a lot of glitter in your cocktails. We've got dueling pianos for fun as well. So maybe we'll get to see you in real life this summer. But if not, maybe you'll catch us on a future webinar. We thank you all so much for your time today. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.